Okay, I think it's officially 7 o'clock, so we can officially call the Board of Selectmen meeting for November 24th to order. All rise, please, as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to begin the meeting this evening with a moment of silence as we remember the life of Melissa Milan, who tragically died earlier this week. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I would like to just, for the public and the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to just read an update from the Police Department and from Police Chief Peter Ingvartson so the community can have the most up-to-date information that we have. There are currently no investigative updates to provide to the community or media at this time regarding the homicide of Melissa Milan. The department continues to use a multitude of resources to examine the circumstances of her death and to determine who is responsible for her death. As expected, there are questions and concerns regarding this crime at this time, as well as the general safety in Simsbury. The town of Simsbury has historically been a very safe place to live, work, visit, recreate, and travel through. Crimes of this magnitude are extremely infrequent in this community, but when a tragedy happens, there is safety-related worry, concern, and fear. The department suggests that the public continue with general day-to-day safety precautions. We will continue to provide increased police presence and patrol for an undetermined amount of time. We will consider and respond to each and every community and individual safety concern and provide timely information when we have information available. Members of the police department are working diligently and around the clock to find the person or persons responsible for this crime. If you have any information regarding this investigation, please contact the Simsbury Police Department at 860-658-3145. I also want to thank the Board of Selectmen for their support of our police department. I want to thank the men and women of the police department for their hard work and dedication to not only solve this crime, but to keep our community safe. And I also want to thank the state police and the surrounding police departments that have been of tremendous support and help to the town of Simsbury. We're very grateful. So, thank you. We'll begin tonight with public audience. Yes, Lisa Gray.
Mary. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am the new Executive Director of the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce, and I started the position about 2.5 months ago. And since that time, I've been working to rebuild the connection between the town of Simsbury and the Chamber. And one of those ways that we're trying to do that is by having a representative from the Chamber attend each of the Board of Selectmen meetings in order for an exchange of information to take place between the two of us. So anything that happens at the meeting here today that may be of interest to our members, I'll be sharing with them, and I'm going to share a little bit of information with you as well about some things that are going on with the Chamber very briefly. In addition to our members attending this meeting, any of the selectmen or anyone is welcome to attend our Board of Directors meeting, which takes place every first Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m., or our Government Affairs Committee meeting, which takes place on the second Tuesday at 8 a.m. We'd love to have you there if you'd like to join us sometime. One of the things we're working on is we're hoping to relocate our office in the summer of next year. And we've been discussing with Mary the possibility of establishing a hub office somewhere in town that would house not only the Chamber, but possibly a visitors center, possibly Main Street Partnership, possibly even the Simsbury Free Bike. And I'm hoping that we can move forward with those plans very quickly as winter and the budget planning season approaches. Something new that we're doing is all of our after-hours events are open to everyone now. They used to be only open to members, so I invite anyone who's even not a member to come to our after-hours events. It's a fee of just $10. The next one is at Bill Seelig Jewelers on December 11th, starting at 7. And, of course, we have our Good Morning Simsbury every month. The next one is December 17th. It's another nice networking session at 8 o'clock. Just goes on for an hour. It's real brief before you start your workday. And on February 6th, we have our very popular Business Leaders Breakfast coming up at Bell Terrace at Avon Old Farms. So I welcome your feedback and ideas on on how we can help the chamber to grow and how we can build our relationship with the town. So just call me or stop by the chamber office anytime.
Thank you, Lisa. Congratulations, and we
Thank
look
you.
forward to working with you. State Representative and Senator Whitcoast, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Happy Thanksgiving week, and thank you so much for having us here this evening. Of course, Senator Whitcoast and I are excited about the new legislative term and lots of challenges ahead, but we look forward to continuing to work with the town, and we're going to invite ourselves before session back to do a legislative preview. But tonight we wanted to come and speak publicly in support of the Simsbury Veterans Memorial. It's such a worthwhile project. I want to thank the veterans here and the VFW and American Legion and Lanza and Bruce Elliott and John Fox and Mr. Vorvart's here and Ray Jennings and Hat Poole and this incredible project. And Kevin, Senator Whitcoast and I have been talking for a while about how to work together on the state level to support this initiative. And obviously, there's a lot of public support so far, and the town has been so terrific about pledging their support and offering their support. And we've been meeting with you folks individually and collectively, and we stand poised at the state level to support you. And obviously, the first probably low-hanging fruit that we all thought about was a STEEP grant, which is on your agenda tonight. And we do ask you to support that application, and then Senator Whitcoast and I, of course, will offer our official letters of support and any support we could do to process that once you submit it, and do our very best during difficult times to secure that money. But I think it's obviously a worthwhile, nonpartisan, bipartisan project that we're also delighted to be behind on behalf of our veterans, and it's going to be a great treasure in addition to Simsbury and to the state. So I wanted to thank Senator Whitcoast for being here and just let you say a few words as well.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen for allowing us to be here tonight, and to all the veterans that are here today and those that we hope to honor forever by the sake of the memorial. You know, your Selectmen have a limited opportunity to apply for grants. And by this appearing on their agenda tonight, and hopefully a positive vote by the board, really moves your project that much forward to show that the town is behind its veterans that have served. And John and I are standing willing and able to carry the torch from when it's passed from the town up to the state level. And we will fight as hard as we can for the limited dollars that are available up at the state to forever enshrine the memories of all the Simsbury veterans that lost their lives over the number of years and all the conflicts. So we stand together in support and urge your acceptance of the proposal by the Simsbury veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thank you for helping us. This is a very competitive process, as you know, and this is a very worthwhile project, and we're going to hear a lot of exciting updates shortly, but having your help at the state capitol is going to mean a lot to us, so thanks
So
for your
once
support.
the application is in, we'll get a letter in together and start the process. So
Great.
please keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks. You too.
Yes. Yeah. Joan? Yes.
Joan Cole, 26 Whitcomb Drive. At the November 10th, 2014 Board of Selectmen meeting in public audience, a town resident came before this board to voice her concerns about issues that were not resolved from her purchase of solar panels from C-Tech Solar, owned and operated by First Selectman Glassman's neighbor, Michael Toro Rosenberg. The resident was concerned that C-Tech misled her family on financing, and she was lied to by the company. She was concerned that her emails to First Selectman were not answered. After finishing voicing her concern about her interaction with C-Tech Solar in the town, First Selectman Mary Glassman had a lengthy discussion about her concerns. At the end of Glassman's discussion, she stated, and I quote, "We addressed the problem and fixed it, right in public audience. Are we efficient or what?" End quote. First of all, the policy of this board is not to discuss issues that are brought to their attention in public audience. This board did not question First Selectman on her interaction with a person commenting in public audience, but allowed Glassman to allegedly resolve a problem while the board condoned the interaction. C-Tech Solar is a fledgling company that will probably go out of business in the near future. This was a civil matter between a resident and a private business and should be settled in the courts, not at a Board of Selectmen meeting. Secondly, First Selectman Mary Glassman has recused herself during all agenda items dealing with C-Tech Solar issues and left the room asserting a conflict of interest. She is a neighbor of the Rosenberg family, which owns C-Tech Solar. Why does First Selectman Mary Glassman pick and choose when she is conflicted and when it is convenient for her to resolve issues brought up by town residents in public audience? Why does First Selectman Mary Glassman and this board have two sets of standards for residents addressing issues in public audience? What is this board smoking? Is this politics over policy? Recently, there were two news releases published in the Hartford Courant. The first was the silver designation for a bicycle-friendly community, and the other was information on the sale of the Hudson property. The town appropriated $150,000 to purchase the Hudson property near the Flower Bridge, asserting that it is floodplain and the house should be demolished. In the next sentence, the town is going to add additional expenses to demolish the house for safety and then add a permanent structure, gazebo, to the site, also in the floodplain. The total cost of the purchase was $152,253.24. This appears to be over budget. The taxpayers have not been told all the additional future costs associated with the purchase and use. The taxpayers supported the purchase of the Elite Ethel Walker School property on false premises with an $11 million purchase. The property has been in its original state for hundreds of years. Why do taxpayers have to incur an additional $500,000 to enhance open space? The town was given Barndore Hill Triangle as part of the Meadowwood development negotiations for open space on November 11, 2014. The town paid Teller family $1,200 to mow the property. This expenditure was not included in the open space budget, but was mowed down for political reasons. The grassy area was used, and you can see this picture, by nesting turkeys, as seen in this picture. Why manicure an open space? Does the town have a long-term plan for open space? We can no longer have political operatives allocate taxpayer funds for political expediency. Simsbury needs professional management. Simsbury needs a town manager. Simsbury recently received a silver designation for a bicycle-friendly community. In my opinion, Simsbury's country roads and paths are dangerous to the bicyclists with this designation. Simsbury will have an increase in the injuries to bicyclists. A recent editorial in the Hartford Courant states, and I quote, "A release recently by the Governor's Highway Safety Association found that a number of bicycles killed in crashes increased 16%, end quote. There have been increased bicycle crashes with significant bodily injury, end quote. Helmets don't protect concussions, they protect the skull from fracturing. Injuries sustained from bicycle accidents could have long-term bodily harm. I am concerned that this designation will give bicyclists a false sense of security. Bicycling is dangerous when competing with cars for the road. And I would like to recently received a check from the town for $77.82 for my appeal on my car taxes. The assessor uses the NADA book as a resource for car assessments. It does not take into account the older cars have high mileage, dents, and many cosmetic or functional breakages that would cost thousands of dollars to repair but do not affect safety. All these issues reduce the assessment of the car, and people should apply for a reduction to their car tax assessment, as I did. I would urge all Simsbury residents to review the consultant reports that concluded that Simsbury needs professional management. Simsbury needs a town manager for long-term planning. And thank you for listening. All my comments will be on www.simsbury.com, Simsbury Patch, and Simsbury.com topics, forum topics. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for honoring the time limit. That was a lot of
I tried my
material in
best.
5
I'm talking
minutes.
faster now.
We appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Robert Kalishman, Simsbury. I'd like to, for 30 seconds or so, convey my condolences to the George Hall family. And I notice we have veterans here this evening. And if the veterans, which they're probably cognizant of the fact, but if the citizens of Simsbury go down and read that monument in front of Eno Hall, they'll see that there's a hall on there. And this is George's brother. And this was the fella that gave up his life during World War I for the United States of America. And I just think that I'd like to convey my condolences to a long, dedicated, patriotic family. Thank you. I wasn't going to address this issue because I wanted to discuss the murder that happened on Thursday. But I feel that I'm obligated to mention it. On Armistice Day, I addressed a question to the dais. And in the question I asked at Eno Hall, what did they intend to do as far as helping the veterans in addition for the monument? And I was told that the town gave the land and that was it. I find that that's unacceptable, in my opinion. I also find that I don't need the natives of Simsbury to recognize me as a veteran or not. I don't need their, if they don't want to recognize me as a veteran, that's up to them. I know in my heart I'm a veteran, and I'm a good veteran, and I'm a combat veteran. Now, the thing is that we're going to have veterans that are going to say, just like at Rocky Hill or just like in Arizona, there'll be veterans that will always come out and they'll say, everything is great for veterans. And it's great because their ox has never been gored, and they feel that if they don't say too much, they're going to get anything they want from the political hierarchy. That's not my operation, and it's never have been. And I think I have a decent record as a veteran. I'm an ex-trustee at the Veterans Home and Hospital. So I've been in the trenches as far as veterans are concerned. Now, I want to talk about the issue that I'm here for, and that's the murder that occurred on Thursday evening. And ironically, it's odd that I was speaking with Miss Coe, and Miss Coe has a scanner, and as we were speaking, she says there's a hell of a commotion going on Horse Boulevard. And I says, what do you think it is? And she says, everybody's hollering, they need lights, they need lights, they need lights. And she says, I think it's for the November stroll that we're going to have on Saturday, and they need more lighting on Horse Boulevard. She says, that's what I think it is, because everybody's hollering, they need more lights. And now we know what they needed more lights for. They had a body in the street, and nobody knew how it got there. Nobody knew whether, they didn't know the circumstances. And the reason they didn't know the circumstances is because the town has cut the budget of the police department. And they're going to say no, but they did, and I stood here and I begged and argued for 2 additional policemen, and they've never been forthcoming. I stood and begged and argued, and we still don't have a contract with the police department. We have money to go and buy a lawyer to sit down in the negotiations to see if they can beat the police department's employees to death to bring down so they don't have to, the town doesn't have to pay their obligation, but we don't have any money for the contract. The police have been running without a contract. And I noticed my legislator is here this evening. He was headed to public safety. Why don't we have a contract?
If you could summarize, Mr. Kelchner.
I'm going to summarize right now.
I've given you the maximum.
The thing is that I've stood here, and I can prove it, and I can produce minutes, and as late as last Tuesday at the Finance Committee, I stood before the Finance Committee, and I pleaded with them for more money for lights and sidewalks. And we've been totally ignored. And I can go back and produce minutes month after month, year after year, asking for more lighting. And I've been totally ignored. And it's because of the remiss of this administration.
Thank
And
you,
we
Mr.
have to put the blame where it belongs.
Thank you.
And one question, Madam how long is it going to be before we have a contract with
Thank
the
you.
police department?
Thank you for your
No
comments.
answer?
Thank you for your comments. This is an opportunity for the public to speak. Anyone else who'd like to address the board? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dave Ryan, President of Simsbury PAC, Inc. I'm here to speak for a minute and a half. Honoring people's request. I'm here to say that we, the PAC Board, wholeheartedly want you to approve June 7th as the date for the Hartford Iron Horse Half Marathon. Josh Miller and Beth Schluger, the Executive Director, are here to answer your questions at the time that you consider that issue. But they've handed out a sheet that has a list of all of the things that are beneficial to the town of Simsbury. And we're very, very thankful for their participation in putting on this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to address the board? If not, thank you all for your comments. We'll move to presentations. It's my pleasure to first announce that Simsbury has been named the first bicycle-friendly community in the state of Connecticut at the silver level. The award recognizes the town's commitment to improving conditions for bicycling through investment in bicycling promotion, education programs, infrastructure, and pro-bicycling policies. We did get a scorecard, and we're very proud that we were scored in engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation, and planning. We were evaluated on arterial streets with bike lanes, total bike mileage, network mileage, public education outreach, percent of schools offering bike education, bike month and bike to work events, active bicycling advocacy programs, active bicycling advisory committee, bike-friendly laws and ordinances, and bike plan that is being implemented. Just to note, we did score the highest on public education outreach, and I want to thank the Simsbury Public Schools for their engagement and their encouragement in offering bike safety programs to all fourth graders, so that we were highlighted for that program. I also want to thank the Simsbury Bicycle Advisory Committee. They were the ones working with our staff to put this application together, and as you can tell, it's a very exhaustive application just to receive the award. It documents everything the town's doing. And I want to thank Lisa Hebner, Mike Payne, and Cheryl Cook for joining me and meeting with the Bike Advisory Committee and thanking them for their hard work. We are very proud to be the first in Connecticut to receive this award, and we're working with other communities throughout the state to help them also become bike-friendly. So congratulations. Lisa.
I also just want to highlight the police department in this award.
Yes.
They participated not as
Absolutely.
at every meeting, and Public Works as well.
Absolutely.
And also the First Selectmen's office.
Thank you. It was a very exciting accomplishment. We'll now move to our presentations. We have a Veterans Memorial update. And we're very proud tonight to have an update on the memorial. The town of Simsbury has been very supportive of the memorial. We are donating the land, and we're providing in-kind services once the facility is constructed. We've been working with veterans on fundraising, and we identified that the STEEP grant was available to the town, and we worked with our state officials to make sure that this was an appropriate project to apply, and we've been assured that it's exactly the kind of projects that qualify for STEEP. So I want to give Len Lanza an opportunity to update the public on this very important project for our town and a very visible show of support for our veterans in our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Len Lanza, 2 Fire and Brick Lane, Simsbury. Yes, we've been working on this together for a long time. In fact, my first appearance before this board was on July 25th, 2012. And that was after we had been working away from the board for a year. It's a long time in coming, but we're getting there, folks, and we're pleased to be here tonight. We welcome the opportunity to appear and to report to you, particularly on the same agenda as the approval of the STEEP grant for our Veterans Memorial. We do, of course, consider our project to be most worthy of being submitted and approved. And our thanks to John Hampton and Kevin Whitkos for being here this evening and for supporting our project. The grant, of course, a STEEP, Small Town Economic Assistance Program, has very specific priorities for this year. They're looking for projects which can begin in the immediate future. We can do that. Have secured additional necessary funds. We've done that. Improve quality of life for residents. It will do that. And generate economic development. We anticipate that will happen as well. There's no question in my mind that groups from all over the state will be coming to Simsbury to see this memorial. For our television viewing audience, I ask that you view our website, which can be found at SimsburyVeteransMemorial.com. If you just type in Simsbury Veterans, you're going to find a wide variety of options. And there's a lot to examine there. It will tell you that donations for inscribed papers to honor family members and or friends will make a perfect holiday gift. I'll repeat that. Donations for inscribed papers to honor family members and or friends will make a perfect holiday gift. Donations are available as follows. A 4x8 brick. The donation of $120 will cover that. And a donation of $200 will take care of an 8x8 paver. Now, order forms and a complete description of the project are available on the website, which again is SimsburyVeteransMemorial.com. Now, as far as a status report, it's getting to be problematic to be extremely specific. And that's because we're at the point in our fundraising campaign where we've talked to a lot of people. The business community has been involved for about a month now. And we're getting yeses from a lot of people. We'll do what we can. The committee has agreed to consider donations in hand when donations are in the bank. Okay? Well, the numbers that I'm reporting do not reflect the promises we've gotten, okay? In cold hard cash, we've got about $88,000. We've got a lot of promises and a lot of expectation that we'll get more promises. Some of the major corporate sponsors are in the process of getting back to us. So that's where we are at this point. It's become necessary for us to make some judgments as to what we consider to be soft and hard by way of promises and pledges. So as the next couple of months go by, I think we'll have a much clearer picture because they will have had more time. We'll be happy to respond to you. I'd like to thank our colleagues for being here, Bruce Elliott, John Fox, Jack Forward, Ray Jennings, and Happy Poole. Thank you for your efforts. These guys are working hard every day. I'll be happy to respond to comments or questions from the board.
Thank you, Len. I'll ask if the board has any questions. I don't think so.
Just thanks.
Yeah, we're really excited to partner and continue to partner, and hopefully the STEEP grant will get us over the finish line, and we can start construction.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We also have a final presentation. There's a lot of exciting things happening at Simsbury Main Street, and Sarah Nielsen's here to update us. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel it's kind of fitting that I'll kind of wrap up the veterans. As some of you may know, I met with Len and a couple years ago now, sitting here, and Bruce, and Main Street's been working. We're actually trying to finalize Main Street becoming the fiscal sponsor for the Veterans Memorial. There's some kinks to work out, but we are trying to move forward with that. And I've had the pleasure of working with John Fox. I'm helping with the education and the public relations portion. I think we've been very successful in that. What we're trying to do is educate the public at large, not just about the memorial, but about veterans issues in general and why people in our community should care about our veterans. There are residents, there are business owners, our kids go to school with them, and they really are part of this community. And so they deserve our respect, and and our commitment as a community. I think we've done a great job, but continually reminding and educating people about the sacrifices they make when they go away. Main Street has been incredibly busy. I won't go over everything. I will say that we did wrap up the 16 weeks of the Simsbury Farmers Market. We have a lot of feedback, and I even spoke with Joan Coe. I know that she had mentioned that she had attended one of the last markets, and it was a little bit slower. What I said to Joan was, which I tell everyone, we're reevaluating. The summer months were fantastic for those that went. I mean, we had hundreds of people, but September just didn't work well for us. So I have a wonderful market master. This will be her third year coming back, having that consistency. So we're reevaluating, revamping everything. Everything is on the table from the day of the market, you name it. So we appreciate anyone's feedback with the market. I will remind the community that it is it's such an honor to have a farmers market. I mean, they've been cropping up everywhere and they kind of come and go. But the Simsbury's Farmers Market has been one of the reasons that we've been listed as CNN Money Magazine. I mean, when we get the accolades we get, the farmers market and the farms and all of the agriculture is so prominent in the reasons why. So it is even though we quite frankly lose money at it, it's one of the things that we continually want to provide to the community and want to make sure that it'll be around for 2015. So any comments, any suggestions, please let us know. There's too much going on right now, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the importance of shopping locally. We have Black Friday coming up, and we have Small Business Saturday, which will be this Friday and Saturday. And Main Street this year has partnered with American Express, and one of the things we're doing is we're a neighborhood champion. And what that means is, as a business association, we look to educate the public on why it's important to shop our small town, shop Simsbury. And there's a lot of reasons why, and I'll just go over a couple of them. But if you shop locally this season, we understand that you can't do all of your shopping in Simsbury, but we're telling people, look to the things you can do here first. Buying in Simsbury is a great way to support yourself, okay? Studies have shown that when you buy from an independent, locally owned business, significantly more of your money is used to make purchases from other local businesses. This strengthens the economic base of the community. Supporting Simsbury community groups, nonprofit organizations like the veterans, like our schools, like all of the things that we care about. Local organizations receive an average of 250% more from smaller business owners than they do from the larger ones. This is all national research. Keep Simsbury unique. Where we shop, where we eat, and where we have fun, all of it makes our community home. Create more jobs in Simsbury. Small local businesses are the largest employer nationally, and in our community provide the most jobs to residents. And finally, encourage Simsbury's prosperity. Economic research suggests that entrepreneurs and skilled workers are more likely to invest and settle in communities that preserve their one-of-a-kind businesses and distinctive character. Simsbury has long held that we believe that quality of life is one of the most important things in any study we've done, whether it's the shred or the polls, everything. Quality of life is important, and you do that by investing back in your community. You do that by shopping locally. And the majority of our small business owners happen to be residents. So you're helping your community several-fold. So we've done a couple of things. Everybody, we are suggesting that you shop any Simsbury business, but we do have a special that we're running with our business community, and hopefully everybody received one of these. What we're doing is, again, we're not suggesting that you should shop. We're suggesting that you shop any Simsbury business, but we wanted to incentivize people to put money into downtown, not just downtown, actually throughout the community. And we wanted to talk about the reasons why, but for a brief time, Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, a variety of our business owners have said that if you come in and you purchase a gift card, a $50 gift card, you'll get $10 off. It's a 2-day special, and it can be Antonio's, Anything Preppy, Bill Seelig, Bosco's, Fitzgerald's, Harvest Cafe, the list goes on and on. So if you choose to do this is a 2-day special. We're doing it 2 days because Simsbury celebrates falls on Saturday, and sometimes, with the family activities, people forget the importance of supporting the local economy. Talking about great partnerships, Main Street also partners with the Simsbury Juniors Women's Club. So we have their Luminary Night, which is coming up. We've been a business partner of theirs for the last 2 years. We're doing the Salvation Army Toy Drive. This will be our 3rd year doing it with the Masons and the Salvation Army. We've put drop-off boxes in the Simsbury Inn, Fitzgerald's. There'll be one in Town Hall if there already isn't already. And Antonio's and Sarah Burns. So this goes to some of the poorest families. These gifts go to some of the poorest families in Greater Hartford. Please consider dropping off a new unwrapped gift. And remember, you can get them at Necker's, which is, again, a Simsbury business. You'll see the theme. And then we promoted Simsbury Celebrates as well, somewhere on here. Oops. Simsbury Celebrates. So again, this is just a reminder, Main Street works to, we work at business retention and we work hard at business retention, and there's a reason. It's not that business recruitment isn't important. I know that everybody wants to see their taxes go down, but the way to attract new businesses is to grow the existing ones. People don't move into communities where businesses are closing and fleeing and vacant. And that's why we spend the most time and the most effort because it takes less money to continually harvest and encourage the local businesses here. So again, just a couple of reminders, please shop locally when you can. If you want to get a great deal this Friday and Saturday, please remember to visit them. And any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for all your hard work on Main Street, and thanks for reminding us that the parking is much better in Simsbury than it is at the mall. So
it is. So
that should be an incentive.
And then we have one final thing for those of you who have pets. There's little bandanas that remind people to shop locally.
My cat would go.
I got boys.
There you go. Very cute. Very cute. Thank you again.
I'll go well with her
Right.
red coat.
A couple of quick updates, and then we'll move to our action items. Just wanted to let the public know that on Friday, the town of Simsbury closed on the purchase of One Old Bridge Road. So the property right next to the Flower Bridge and right next to the Farmington River is officially owned by the people of Simsbury. Our next step in the process is to put together a working group with town staff to identify many potential uses for the property and what makes the most sense for the town of Simsbury. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the Planning Commission, many other boards, commissions, organizations, and individuals for their support and guidance on this purchase. We'd like to particularly thank Betty Hudson and her family for their support in using the property to enhance the lives of our residents and tourists alike. This is a very exciting project, and we look forward to working with the community to determine what the next step is for the land right in the heart of our downtown. And a reminder that Simsbury Celebrates is this Saturday, the first Saturday after Thanksgiving. The events start at 4 o'clock, and you can bring families, friends, neighbors to Hot Meadow Street for the holiday kickoff. There is a holiday sing, a toy maker's workshop, a gingerbread exhibit, and so many more wonderful activities. The fire truck parade starts at 7:25, and we thank the Simsbury Volunteer Fire Department, and the fire display will start about 8:15. The Simsbury Celebrates Planning Committee has done a fantastic job, and as you all know, it is it's sponsored by the town, but it's really all the hard work is done by volunteers. And I'd also like to thank Taryn Ray from our Culture, Parks, and Rec Department, the Fire Department, and many others who have put together a terrific event. There is a detailed information on the event at www.simsburycelebrates.com for more information. And finally, we have some good news. As the board knows, we had requested that the town release an affordable housing restrictive covenant for 6 Powder Forest homes. As part of the deal, Landworks Development did agree to pay $7,000 for each property released. One property was released upon completion of the deal, and the town has just received a payment of $28,000 to release 4 of the 5 remaining homes. As requested by the Board of Selectmen, we will deposit those funds in the town's social services account in accordance with the board's policy that it be used for housing expenses. And I'd like to thank Landworks, Chris Nelson, and Ron Janesco for honoring their part in funding a very important housing incentive. So congratulations to the Simsbury Social Service Department. And now we'll move to action items. The first is to approve tax refunds as recommended by our tax collector. At this point, the refunds total $553.54. Can I have a motion to approve?
Move that.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to approve a resolution for the 2015 STEEP grant application for Simsbury Veterans Memorial. Again, the town has worked with the veterans who have worked very hard to make this a possibility and a reality. The town has donated the land. We are pledged to help with in-kind contributions, which could be very significant once we start construction. And we looked for grant possibilities. As our policy, once we receive a grant announcement, we meet with staff to determine what projects are eligible for grants and what, in our estimation, is the most important priority project. And I'm very proud to say that this project rose to the top of the list. And Jeff Shea worked very closely with the veterans to make sure that we put together the best possible application we could. And as you heard earlier, Mr. Lanza said this is the perfect application for the state to fund. It has all of the pieces that are so significant and important, honoring our veterans at the top of the list, but also having that wonderful honor in the center of our town, which will spur folks to see the commitment of the town right on Hot Meadow Street, and to spur other economic development and to encourage people to reflect and to give thanks. I think it's a great project, and it also has a number of partners. The veterans have worked very hard to get donations from attorneys and accountants and designers, and Terry Ann Hahn was one of the primary designers we all know who came earlier, and those were all done as donations as part of this project. So we've got the right mix of public-private partnership, donations, volunteers, and I think it's a great project. So now we just have to get the money. Any questions?
I'll move that.
I think you have to read the resolution into the record.
Resolution of the legislative body.
Yes.
Whereas the state is soliciting grant applications for 2015 STEEP grants. The grant provides funding at a maximum of $500,000 with no requirements for a local match. The Veterans Memorial Project requires $150,000 in additional funding in order to construct the project. Additional funds for the Veterans Memorial Project are being raised through private donations by the Simsbury Veterans Memorial Committee 2014. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Selectmen, approve the submission of the 2015 STEEP grant application for construction of the Veterans Memorial Project.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Next item is to authorize the town attorney to draft an ordinance for 100% disabled veterans exemption. We did receive notification from the state of Connecticut that there was a state statute that will allow municipalities, upon approval of its legislative body or town meeting, to increase the property tax exemption for 100% disabled veterans with limited income from 2 to 3 times the veteran's base exemption. Once we received this information, I did ask David Gardner, our assessor, to do a review of the state statute as it would apply to Simsbury, so his memo is in your packet. We determined that there were 4 veterans in the town of Simsbury with 100% disability rating, and they could qualify for this exemption. We think it's important, we think it's timely, and we would need to draft an ordinance, have a public hearing, and adopt the ordinance. So the first step would be to get the Board of Selectmen's approval, to refer it to town council, and to have an ordinance drafted for a review. Any questions?
No.
No.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to authorize the town council to draft an ordinance pursuant to Public Act 13-244, establishing an option to provide additional property tax exemption for 100% disabled veterans.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Just according to the assessor, if we would just need to put this ordinance in place prior to the spring, so disabled veterans would have notification to apply for it in time prior to the October grand list. It would exempt the property as of October. So we just need to be mindful of the time frame to make sure we get it done as quickly as possible so that folks will have the ability to apply for the funding. So we have plenty of time. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item is to approve a schedule to the 2015 Iron Horse Marathon. I want to thank Beth Schluger for being here, and we appreciate your help. And we also, Josh Miller's also here, so thank you, Josh, for being here and your help. And Jerry Toner for working with the Iron Horse Marathon. I think this is the year, what year is this that we've been doing it? 13. Lucky 13. We did just a couple of quick updates, and then I'll let Jerry introduce it. We did have some comments and some feedback at the last marathon that were concerned about the process and the closure of the road in particular. So we did, thanks to the Iron Horse Marathon folks, we did have several meetings to try to address some concerns about traffic and road closures and start times. And I want to thank you very much for accommodating the town and working with us. And so Jerry has a couple of changes from our last event.
Thank you, Mary. Very quickly, as Mary said, to address some of the concerns that had, come forward after the last race, both Beth and Josh were good enough to come in and work with staff and with representatives from the police department on some of the traffic concerns. They went back, came up with some alternatives that you have in the packet. Certainly Josh and Beth can speak to the specifics of those, but we feel that they are going to, they will go a long ways to alleviate the concerns of those neighbors. And the police department has reviewed it. They're okay with the changes, and so this recommendation would allow the event to move forward and go through the public gathering process. So with that, again, Josh or Beth can address the specifics on it, and we can answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you. Any questions? Sean?
So adjustment 1 makes sense. Adjustment 2, down at the bottom of your letter, you talk about this adjustment would work for the half marathon would work. However, we've not found an alternative to the race routes for the 10K and the 5K. Does that mean you'd be unable to do them, or, I mean, what does that mean?
If the change is made to the course, we will not be able to run the 10K.
Okay.
And that will take about 25% of the participants away from the event, which will cost us 25% of the donation we give to the Boy Scouts.
Okay. I don't like that. I mean, we're talking about the road being closed for what, an hour?
40 minutes.
40 minutes?
Yeah, the biggest impact's 40 minutes.
As it stands today, right?
As it stands, as we currently run the event, the biggest impact's 40 minutes in which runners are running in opposite directions, making it a challenge. But other than that, the runner's on one side of the road.
Okay.
I think adjustment 1 addressed our concern, which was the road was completely closed, and I think with the changes that have been made, the road can be open for those folks
Right,
who need it.
northbound. Yeah,
Northbound.
it can be, yeah, for 40 minutes, right now, as it stands now, for 40 minutes, there's going to be runners on both sides of the road. So safety-wise, you can't keep the road open, but that's for 40 minutes. Once they're through running on southbound, then the whole northbound lane opens up, and the runners stay to the southbound lanes, and the northbound opens up. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
8 o'clock to 8:40 a.m.
Right. Thank you. And again, just the concerns that my office received was that the signage was reflecting that the road was closed from 7 to 1, so it was cause for concern for folks who needed to go to church and get out. So I think with better signage and with the tinkering of the time frame, I think it'll address, we feel confident that we'll address the concerns of folks who need to get out.
So we're just looking at approving the event with option 1 here?
Yes.
Option 1 creates a concern from the police department with their staffing. That's the issue that they have in terms of and I'm going to paraphrase it, with the people coming off their shift, they don't have the ability to staff it with that earlier start. So adjustment 2 from the police department standpoint was the preferable way to go.
We can't have, 7 a.m. is really that much of a problem?
I'm just telling you what I'm passing along with what they told me.
Then I propose we leave the race as is. Because it sounds like one option is going to deprive at least 25% of the participants, which doesn't make sense. if we can't safely staff it for the other option, then we can't do that one. So then neither option works.
Well, there were some adjustments, Jerry, about the road closures and the routes. So is there any, are you confident there can be some changes? What changes are we looking at that will improve the situation from the last time? I mean, I think the concern is if we do nothing from what we did last time, then I think it's not going to address the complaints that we've received. So I'm just trying to get clarification.
I believe with adjustment 2, and you guys can tell me, is that it changed from 3 loops to 2?
Changing half the inch.
Yeah, but you cost them the 10K and the 5K for that.
Right.
I'm looking at adjustment 2.
May I?
Yeah.
This is doing the half the opposite direction.
Right. The bottom line is, what will work is to keep it exactly as it is. Improve the signage so it's much more clear to people that there will be limited access or no access for 40 minutes from 8 to 8:40. And then there is northbound access. So the signage needs to communicate that so people don't feel that they can't get out. That's number one. And number two, we are going to cone the entire length of what we need to cone on Terry's Plain Road so that the runners do not go into those, the northbound lanes. So the road stays open.
Yeah, I think
so.
they
Those
were-
are the big. Those are pretty dramatic
Yeah.
changes, I think.
Okay, because the concern again, just that we received was that folks who needed to get out, there was such a long period of time that folks couldn't get out that it caused a lot of concern, particularly for some older residents that needed to get out. And that length of time of the road closure was causing concern for our residents.
So it sounds like that's been addressed, and it's only actually 40 minutes. I mean, we shut down Route 10 for longer than that for the
Yeah, no, I
every
think
year.
that addresses the concern.
long
The
as
other
the
option
northbound-
is the earlier start time, if that doesn't work this time.
Yeah, but if the
think
police
that-
department
that-
says they can't do that, then.
Well, I think that if, I mean, we're very supportive, we're grateful to have the Iron Horse Marathon here. It brings a lot of business in.
And obviously the participants.
Yeah. I think we should approve it with the improvements as stated, and to have the department again look at the earlier start time and see if they can work with the department, and if we'll leave it to the public gathering process to do that. But I think we just want to send the message that obviously we want to respect people's ability to get out and use
Absolutely.
their streets, and yet to be able to have a safe, successful
Absolutely.
event.
I move that we approve the Iron Horse Half Marathon event for June 7, 2015. Allow the event to proceed through the public gathering process with the suggested improvements, subject to review of the earlier start time with the police department.
Great.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Look forward to a successful event. Next item is a request to refer a request to accept Powder Forest Drive as a public road to town staff for review and recommendation. I did receive a letter from the homeowners of Powder Forest Drive. They raised several concerns about safety and security, about a private road that currently is owned by the development. As with all of our letters for request, I did have town staff do a staff review. They did raise several suggestions and questions, and did suggest that a further review needed to be conducted prior to a recommendation being received by the Board of Selectmen. There have been other roads, private roads in other towns, as we've researched, that have been accepted by the town for various safety concerns, and whether this request rises to the level of that, I don't know, and we don't know at this point, but we have received a formal request to review it. Our town staff has conducted a preliminary review, and pending Board of Selectmen's referral to staff, we would conduct a more in-depth review and bring it back to the Board of Selectmen for a recommendation. So, with that, any questions?
I have a few questions, not so much specifically, other than waiting to hear back from the town staff.
Yes.
I think we definitely need to do that to answer these questions.
Yes.
See exactly what-
I think what you've received is all the information that we have at this point. We haven't invested any time or review. We haven't inspected the road. We just did a preliminary, really just try to raise the questions that we would need to answer before we could make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And then if the Board of Selectmen has any other additional questions that we didn't raise, just pass them along, and we'll include those in our review as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I read through this, my only thought was, I get the speeding issues and some of those. I assume town staff will not hold too much weight to a 100-year storm and an insufficient contractor as a reason to take this for, public property. They hired a bad contractor who couldn't get them out in 48 hours. I'm not sure that's the town's challenge. There's plenty of other communities in this town that had their contractors get them out in much less than 48 hours, mine included. So be happy to recommend a better contractor if they need one. So I would hope that we would review it on the merits of the speeding issue and the other, the police matters versus whether they can get snow out or not. So that's my only comment on it.
And I would just ask if we could, when they come back, when they mention things like the quality of the pavement and then, of course, ongoing maintenance, if this comes back with it, as we're heading into budget season, the impact on our budget, not only from a one-time cost, but any sort of ongoing operating costs.
Will do.
Is there updated traffic from the new Carson's Way development? I drive up and down there. There's a lot of houses going in there now, so.
I don't have any information on it.
The town will have.
We will, we know what was approved in the subdivision.
Yeah.
And that would be the most, I think the points that were raised is that there are children there now where there wasn't. There, a couple of, there's a new road put in where it wasn't approved in the past. So the initial subdivision has certainly changed from when it was originally approved.
Yeah.
But again, it was always accepted as a private road. So whether there's safety and security concerns that rise to the level that other towns have accepted private roads, we don't know yet.
I think it merits a review.
We should review. Yeah.
So can I have a motion to refer the request to town staff for review and recommendation?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next is a resolution to approve the CRA, Capital Region Council of Governments Metropolitan Planning Organization. We need to vote on whether to accept the towns of Berlin, Columbia, Coventry, Mansfield, New Britain, Plainville, Southington, Stafford, and Wellington in part into the Capital Region Council of Governments Municipal Planning Organization. This is really just a formality. The state of Connecticut, the legislature mandated that the regional council of governments disband and reform into a smaller number. CROG, as we know, did that. Under federal law, though, the Capital Region Council of Governments needs to be the same number of towns and the same member towns as the Metropolitan Planning Organization in order to qualify for federal funding. So this is really just a formality, and the legislative body of each community must approve the recommendation. So if I could have a motion to approve.
I'll move that.
I'm sorry, we need a resolution.
Oh, gosh.
Nicely done.
That was a trick. Okay, starting with the town letterhead.
Yes.
Resolution to accept new towns into the Capital Region Council of Governments, CROG, Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO. Whereas the towns of Berlin, Columbia, Coventry, Mansfield, New Britain, Plainfield, Southington, Stafford, and Wellington have voted to join the Capital Region Council of Governments, Metropolitan Planning Organization, and whereas the MPO for the Capital Region will govern the allocation of federal transportation funding within the region, and whereas the federal 23 CFR 450.310 Metropolitan Planning Organization designation and redesignation process requires that units of general purpose local government vote in favor of MPO redesignation in order for such redesignation to take effect. And now therefore be it resolved that the Municipal Board of Selectmen hereby votes to accept the towns of Berlin, Columbia, Coventry, Mansfield, New Britain, Plainville, Southington, Stafford, and Wellington in part or in whole into the CROG MPO.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Where is Wellington?
That was very, very well done. What?
Where's Wellington?
You obviously did not go to UConn.
God. There's 169 towns. Come on. No.
Really?
UConn.
UConn.
Never even knew there was a town called Wellington.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Appointments and resignations. First, to accept the resignation of Rich Miller as a regular member of the Conservation Commission, with our thanks for serving 25 years.
I think that's more than he thought he was bargaining for, Beth.
With our big
Do we want to delay this for a month?
For sport.
I move that.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is to appoint Joanne Hogan, Kamadi Hogan, as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals with an expiration date of December 7th.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is to appoint Patrick Spalding as a regular member of the Conservation Commission.
I'll move that.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is to appoint Donna Beinstein as an alternate of the Conservation Commission.
So moved.
Second?
Mary, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
These are the reappointments, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So these aren't going to take effect until the old terms have expired?
Yes, that's
Because
correct.
we're not doubling up on
No.
anybody?
Oh, no.
I just want to,
Yeah.
I assume so.
Intention to,
Like, so these, when we approve these tonight, normally they take effect immediately upon swearing in. These would not take,
These have effective dates.
Do they?
19.
okay.
Oh, term expiring, sorry. Term
So,
expiring. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
so
Yes,
these are
So I
tracking.
think we just say that we approve these effective the commencement of the new term or whatever.
Yes.
Versus tonight, right?
That's right.
It's not a big deal,
Yeah.
but
Correct.
Sorry about that.
don't want to double up the committee.
No,
Really big
thank you. I'm sorry, did we have a motion?
We-
No.
I
Yeah,
know
you
I
did.
made the motion.
Okay.
Did I make? I made
Yes.
at least, yes.
The last one.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Nancy to appoint Donna Beinstein pending upon the
Start of the
start of the
next
next term.
Effective the start of the term, yeah.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Reappoint Dave Moore to the Board of Ethics. Can I have,
Beginning of his next term.
at the beginning of the next term?
I'll move that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Appoint Jan Beatty as a regular member of Aging and Disability Commission
At the
at the beginning of the next term.
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Reappoint Marvin Koff as a regular member of the Aging and Disability Commission, effective next term.
Move that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Reappoint Mary Ellen Long to the regular member of the Aging and Disability Commission.
Move that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Reappoint Mike Long to the Police Commission.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Other business, we have a joint Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Education meeting scheduled for December 15th. We will get, this is to talk about the budget. It's never too early to talk about next year's budget. We'll have a date, time, and location posted as a public meeting, but I did want to let the public know and let the Board of Selectmen know to put that on your calendar.
You don't have a time yet?
I
I'm
do
sorry.
not have
Okay.
time. The next item is the Finance Director's Report. We did, the board requested that we have a list of all special revenue funds, and you have received a copy of those. Please take a look at those, and we'll have a further discussion at the joint board meeting about the details of what those funds are used for, but I did want to make sure that the Board of Selectmen had that information prior to the joint meeting.
Thank you.
Next item is regular meeting minutes of November 10th. Can I have a motion to approve?
Move those.
Second.
Do you have any corrections, changes?
Yes, I do.
Lisa?
On page, it's not labeled pages, what, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Numbers
Page
out of there.
4. Yeah, got it, page 4. Right under, at the top, Mr. Ryan said they are also looking into, I think that's one word, right?
Oh.
On page 6, midway through the second paragraph above E, it said, Mr. Askham made a motion to explore da-da-da-da, and to address the process of ECD. I think that's the DECD.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that- On page 7, at the first paragraph, after further discussion, the board thanked Mr. Toro for coming for the board for information. They did tell him he could always go before, not the building development committee, but the business development committee. And on the back, it says, Ms. Hebner said the PECO study, it's PISA, and I have it here, I meant to bring this last time, so if you just change that to PISA. And it's possible I misspoke last time, too.
Where's that, Lisa? I'm sorry.
Under my
Standard Board of Ed.
reports, Board of Ed. Yeah, it's PISA.
Oh, PISA.
We were really here till 9:45.
But it's here, and if anyone wants to take a look at it, it's really very impressive, so I do have a copy here.
FISA.
Thank you. PISA.
PISA.
Any other comments, corrections, changes? All in favor with those changes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you for your careful reading of the minutes. Next item is to have personnel reports.
Okay.
Lisa.
The Personnel Subcommittee met today at 6 PM in Conference Room 103 to continue our, the completion of the recommendations from Mr. Erdman as to the restructuring of the First Selectman's office. But really what this is a continuation of the marketing study marketing analysis that we do for every position. This is no different than that. We do it for all of the department heads, and we had put off doing it for the First Selectmen's because we wanted the benefit of a consultant as we looked at what was out there. When it came time to make the recommendation, the Personnel Subcommittee liked the chart that was presented and approved that. Felt that this was a good recommendation reflective of the market comparison. It wasn't about diminishing the power of the First Selectman. We are not, at the subcommittee, allowed to change the form of government at the local level, so we are still a selectman form of government. What we have been doing since 2010 is working to make sure the town has enough professional support. As the world has become more complicated, we've created positions to guide and advise the First Selectmen in conducting their business. If you take a look at what Darien has done in Greenwich, which are also the selectmen form of government, it's very similar to what they've done. So what it does is it enables us to keep the selectmen form of government where the ultimate decision remains in the hands of the person elected by the people. So direct democracy through the selectmen form of government is retained, but it adds the additional professional advice and expertise that in a complicated world we feel that all towns need. What we did not do, because we wanted the full board to discuss this, is when to start it. The way it works per our charter, the selectman's salary can be set, is set during the budget process in July. So you could start the reduction in salary at $75,000. But we have a long-standing policy at the Personnel Subcommittee that we make any changes to elected officials, both the First Selectman and the Registrar. We do it with the term instead of with the person. So that way you avoid the conflict of a misperception out there. So, for instance, if a majority of one party votes to reduce the First Selectman's salary of another party, it can come across as looking political. Whereas the same if a majority of the Board of Selectmen voted to raise the First Selectman's salary of someone in their party, it could come across as looking at political. So this is a long-standing policy that we've had. We used it when we reduced the benefits to the Registrar of Voters. At the time, they didn't need the medical benefits, and they were willing to give them up, but we did not do that. We did it with the term. And I think one of the things we want to keep in mind as we think about this issue is what will it do to someone who's running for office if they go in and think, well, if I run for office midway through my term, not this board, because this board is very kind and thoughtful, but you could envision a situation where someone with a malicious intent might vote to slash the First Selectman's salary who's been elected by the people to $1, which is permissible per the charter. What kind of incentive does that give to people who run? And it gives the perception that it's about the person instead of the position. So what Lee Erdman recommended, what the First Selectman recommended, is that we go with the recommended salary reduction. And I'll just point out one of the changes we made in the retirement plan is to give the elected First Selectman the choice of only a defined contribution plan. So we would eliminate the pension option for the First Selectman with a vesting that begins at the end of a 2-year term. So partial terms, you don't get the vesting. But we didn't want to make it 5 years because you don't want to incentivize someone to run for office to get the benefits. You want them to run because of the public service and the desire to serve the community. So we didn't want to make the vesting contingent upon their decision to run again, because we thought that that was a poor incentive. So with that, I would open it up to the discussion. We did not make a recommendation as when to start it. I will point out that the state constitution, once you adopt a salary, does not permit you to increase the salary midterm. It is silent as to whether you can decrease it midterm. The thing that would prevent this board from doing it midterm would just be a policy, a longstanding policy that the Personnel Subcommittee has had. I think it's a good policy because it sends a good message to the community that we're not about punishing people or rewarding people we like. We're about really evaluating the position. So whoever the next selectman is would then get this salary, whether it's Mary or someone else. So it starts with the next selectman as opposed to midterm. And it's a policy decision. And the point I make, we can always abandon a policy, but if you abandon a policy at the moment of decision, it wasn't much of a policy to begin with. The time to do that is before decision time. So I'm going to be recommending that we institute this at the beginning of the next term so that the next selectman has this, whoever that may be.
Thank you, Lisa.
First selectman, rather.
Thank you. Any questions?
I've got some,
Mike.
and I'll start out by saying I'm uncomfortable kind of talking about this, Mary, with you sitting here. I'm not asking you to leave, but this is not personal. I have a problem, and actually I'd like to see a copy of that policy.
It's in the minutes. It's just a spoken minutes. We can pull
Okay,
it up.
so it's not what I'll call a written policy per se?
No.
Other than in the minutes?
But it's
Okay.
a multiply stated policy. And if, you weren't on the board, then you don't have to accept it.
And just for clarification, if the proposal, as Lisa outlined, that would take effect at the next term of the Board of Selectmen, or the first term of the first Selectman, I would not have a conflict because we don't know who's running and we don't know who will be elected.
Well,
So,
and
You're right.
Should the
Point well
board want to, so I just want to be very clear, I feel very comfortable with using my experience to talk about the next term. If there's a motion on the table to do anything this term, then I will recuse myself, just so that we're all on the record of how it works. A conflict isn't a conflict until there's a financial interest or conflict, and if we're talking about the next term, then I would not have a conflict.
And I would just add to that, we're talking about a reduction in salary, as recommended by the first selectman, not an increase in salary.
And I have outlined the history. I think it was important to look at the percent increases. I have outlined the increases
No, we
of
did.
the position of the first selectman.
Yep.
And you can see that in 2007, there was a 13.62% increase in the first selectman's salary during midterm. So that is a policy that probably we shouldn't follow. And that was what Lisa was saying.
Yeah, I
in terms of
agree.
Increasing, a board that has majority control, increasing the first selectman's salary of someone in that same party is probably not a precedent we want to.
No, ironically, that was a bipartisan motion when that one happened,
doesn't-
but it shouldn't have happened. I agree with you. So, just for ease of this, because again, we talked about two things. We talked about the number and the package, and then we separated it and talked about implementation.
Correct.
I think for our purposes, we should probably do it the same way,
Sure.
so that if there is a need to recuse yourself at some point, we at least have the conversation about the dollars first.
That would be great.
In my opinion. Because the one thing I brought up at personnel, and while I am comfortable and I did support this, I just wanted the full board to hear, I just want to make sure we're not cheapening this position. I get that 75,000 makes sense, a consultant told us that, but are we going too far? Are we depriving ourselves of potential talent in the future, whoever that may be? And I agree that a reduction needs to happen. 75 sounds good, but I'm not an expert in this. I don't know if that's too far, not enough. I think it's enough. I just want to make sure we're not cheapening the position, I guess is my point.
I share that concern with Sean, and at the time that the consultant did do the comparison, at that point, the Darien first selectman was making 80,000. Since that time, they have voted to increase it to 115. So there is a slight, they viewed it that it was not enough in Darien to attract the kind of talent they were looking for. And they also have a similar position to Mr. Cook. The positions we have now in town are very similar to Darien, so it was useful to look to them as a comparison.
And again, I think it's really important, and I commend the board for hiring a professional, because we all can throw a number out.
Yeah, I'm
And,
not gonna second
I
that, but-
think the fact that you did spend the time and the money of asking a professional to come back with a number gives us all more ease that the number was the right number. I would just suggest, rather than putting the future boards in an awkward position, we do track cost of living. And when the number was recommended, that was a year ago, and it'll be a year from now, should the board implement it in the next term. And there are cost of living adjustments that we do pass along to staff. If the board felt comfortable, you could, for future, instead of considering it every year, you could make the position also be subject to the cost of living increases that are given to other non-union staff. Just a thought, but it's a way of not having that number fall behind. As you can see, I left the salary of the first selectman the same since 2008.
Yep.
So the salary of the first selectman in 2008, even though the same number is the same as 2015, that number has significantly fallen behind all of the other cost of living adjustments. So actually, you could say that's a decrease in salary because the cost of living adjustments haven't been put in place. So we in effect have decreased the salary of the first selectman because I voluntarily froze it, but we have not made any cost of living adjustments. So by not taking action, we've decreased it. If you were to implement that in the next first selectman position, let's just, for discussion purposes, so I can participate, if we're talking about December of implementing of the next term of the first selectman, if you don't put that cost of living catch-all in there, then it will fall behind again until the next term of the first selectman. So it's just something to think about if you if you want to keep it current and not and address your concerns, Sean, which I think are valid.
Yeah.
I do think that the recommendation of the professional, while we can tinker with the number, it was carefully reviewed, and I think when we fully implement the changes, the bulk of the work that takes the time of the first selectman and the expertise, and the reason that we took that away is because not every first selectman comes in with the human resource background to be able to do reviews of staff. This protects the town because the chief administrator will be doing the reviews, subject to the review of the first selectman. So while, but again, you'd have the professional staff input in doing that rather than whatever the background of the first selectman was. So I do think there was some logic to the number.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we all agree that this is probably, if not to the dollar, the right number for what the position has evolved to, and based on the study and everything else. So I think that's good. Ironically, years ago that probably would have been more of a discussion point, but as Lisa put out there, there's been a lot of study and thought to this over a number of years that's led us to a relatively simple conclusion that I think all six of us agree with. So I think that's good.
I think that if you go back to, just for some history, if you go back to prior to my first term, which is ancient history, the staff of the first selectman consisted of the first selectman and the secretary. So you can see, there's a lot of, I think, protections that have been put in place. And I think what's made Simsbury so great is that we attract professional staff. And I think that's a credit to the Board of Selectmen because people don't feel that they come here and they're subject to political whim. In some towns, there's changing of staff. And we've done a very good job of keeping the policy at the policy level and asking staff for their professional input and advice and making those decisions. And I think that's gone a long way to helping us attract good people and protecting the town. Regardless of who's in office, you don't need any qualifications, which is wonderful because anyone can run. But at the same time, there's certain things that have to get done and need to get done by a professional. And we've managed to get to this point where I think we have the best of both worlds. Anyone to run for office and serve, and it's the pleasure of the people who they elect, and yet at the same time the protection of having professional staff to make sure all those statutes and laws and federal regulations and grant applications all get done as well.
I think you make a good point about the cost of living increase, though, and we did not discuss that in the committee. I don't know if you want to reconsider.
Well, there are two things we could do. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, we could do it at the Personnel Subcommittee every year and vote it for the next term. We could certainly do that. Or if you just want to make it automatic, you can make it automatic, but a new Board of Selectmen might
take it away.
Yeah, for the next term. So either way, it doesn't, I'm comfortable doing it either way.
Either way, we do all the other salaries at personnel.
Right.
We ought to be including, I guess, we ought to be including the first selectman in that.
As a regular, as a personnel subcommittee, we should include that as part of our deliberations.
I would just
Either way, we're going to address it.
Yes, I would just say, again, because I actually believe in the policy, whatever we do for the first selectman, it would have to start at the next term. And that's required actually by the state constitution. So even if we wanted to increase it.
No, I know, I'm just
Yeah.
saying we should make that part of our deliberations for next
Absolutely.
time.
Understood.
That's a good point.
Any other questions?
Well, I think that, as, we sort of went over this at Personnel Subcommittee, but part of our review was how the position has changed with the addition of all that staff, and, which is great, and we all agree that it's made us a lot better, and it's made us more efficient, and we function better as a town for all that, and that's great. And because of all that, the position of first selectman has changed somewhat, whether it hasn't been formally delegated, but there are supports now that are in place that weren't in place, before. So while I appreciate the, holding the line on the salary, we are paying more, and I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it, but we have to choose where we spend our dollars. And I think part of the reason for having this discussion, with all of us was that, we owe it to the taxpayers to explain how we spend our dollars and why we're doing what we're doing. So it really had nothing to do with any one of us. It was just about how the position is evolving and how we're evolving as a town, to accommodate that. So this is why I thought it was important to have this discussion, with everybody while we're doing it.
And I would just add, my process for evaluating this absolutely was on position and position alone. Looking back to the fact that, and I would agree that the staff that we have is outstanding, and the professionalism and the skill sets that they bring have been big value added for the town, from public works to the, management of the Performing Arts Center, and adding risk management folks, and the whole host of things. So I think over the 7-year period, where the salary has stayed the same is nice, but we have had the benefit of those added positions there that have taken on the responsibilities that were one time done by
Just
that
for
office.
clarification, we haven't accepted this recommendation, so I actually am not implementing the recommendation. I'm actually continuing to do all of the things that the first selectman is required to do until the board adopts this. So just for clarification, I just want to make it clear, it's not that other staff is doing it and I'm not doing it. We're transitioning. So until the board of selectmen votes to take those responsibilities away, it will change at that point.
And I think, I'm sorry, I should clarify, what I'm saying is going back to the history and talking about, and maybe I misunderstood what Cheryl was saying and reiterating, was talking about Public Works Director, and so going on that salary history that you were talking about was more of the point I was making.
I would just clarify. I just wanted to clarify, we're actually not taking any responsibility away from you. The first selectman does retain the final decision-making process. It does permit you to hire someone to assist you with that.
Correct.
And you can delegate to them if you want them to do things, you can ask them to do that, which by our charter was not permissible before. So this is actually not you giving up. You are the first selectman is still the CEO of the town, and that's
I guess I would
required.
just clarify, when the town initially started, there was no one to delegate it to.
Correct.
So, and in fact, I credit, again, the Board of Selectmen we at one point eliminated the Public Works Director position.
Correct.
Which I think
It's
the
a
board
mistake.
wisely decided very quickly that was not a position that should be filled by an elected official. That is a position that should be filled by a professional, and I credit the board for putting that back in, because I think that, as we saw during the storms, that's very important.
One of the things I mentioned at personnel, although it's a little premature to do so now, when it comes time to the next charter revision, I will be recommending the position and probably a name change to chief administrator, or the administrator for the town, be incorporated into the charter, because I think we are at a point in time, based on the development of so many new laws, so many new regulations, that it is important that this, just like the Public Works, become a dedicated position in town, so that there is always the support there, and you can't have someone come in, not that the public would ever elect someone who come in and say, I don't need any of these people, I'm going to do it on my own. But the fact is, with the laws as complicated as they are, you do want the advice of a trusted advisor, I think.
Good point. Any other questions?
Mary,
Mike?
I'm wrestling with this, and I think Lisa made, actually, everybody here made some very good points. My only concern is that, and I think Lisa's point was very good about not making this in any way, shape, or form, a partisan change to take away money or do something or give money.
Right.
I think that's a very good point. My only concern is going before the taxpayers to say, we're not going to do this for a year. And that's my only concern.
Well, I guess you'd have to make a motion to accept the recommendation effective and put a date in.
Well,
Lisa.
I would just want to add, because you weren't there at the personnel when or you may have been there at one point, but the position for the increase in salary for Mr. Cook and Mr. Kimball was funded by the reduction of a position at the Board of, in the Finance Department. So it's a net, that part of it was net neutral. Right. And, it wasn't, and it was about shifting responsibilities within the First Selectman's office and town management that enabled us to do that. So it's impact on, now, Eric Gomez's position, that will be dependent on whether the Board of Education funds part of it. So that, we're hoping that they will, because it makes sense to go in that direction. And Tom, did you want to add to my description of that?
I think you captured it accurately. The only other thing I'd say is that Bobby Crescenzo was at the Personnel Subcommittee meeting, and he pointed out two sections in the charter which do essentially provide that the salary of the First Selectman is set as part of the budget process and can't be changed during the budget cycle. So according to what Bob told us today, the earliest possible time that one could implement this change would be July 1st.
But the policy whether you like the policy or not, or you want to follow it or not, which is fine, I believe it is a good policy, is also consistent with that you do it with the term. So it would be effective at the moment the next selectman takes office. And that way you take away any perception of partisan motivation.
So I guess at this point, it would be helpful to have a clarification as to whether we have a motion on the table so I could decide if I have a conflict or not.
Well, I'll make a motion. Did you make a motion?
No, there's no motion on the table.
No, I was asking questions.
Okay, so I would make a motion that the changes as recommended in the chart put forward to the Personnel Subcommittee, in which each member of the Board of Selectmen has, be accepted and implemented at the beginning of the next term.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
I would just add that this will actually enable us to budget for the next budget season, because we will then know it won't be a full salary, then it'll be a partial salary that begins.
And if I could just add, I've struggled with this decision, and Lisa and I have talked about this issue several times over the last few years, and when I step back and think about it, I think the term is the right time to make this change. I get all the reasons why you want to do it on 7/1 if people do want to do that. You save the town $16,500 if you do it then versus the term, which $16,500, that's several houses worth of taxes, and I get that. I talked to several people about this today, and I got many different opinions on it, but if I step back and I think about it, if I was sitting in the chair, or if it was a different set of circumstances, I think doing it at the term is truly the only way to make it about the position, and that's why I second it, and I'm supporting that decision.
Thank you. And also, I would just add, it does give some security to the person who's been elected, that they know that when they come in, this will be the same salary for the 2-year term. It might not be if you run again, but for the 2-year term, you don't constantly worry if there's a majority that is not yours, whether there's going to be some ill intent or perceived, and sometimes it's just perceived ill intent, because as I said to both Sean and Cheryl, at the Personnel Subcommittee, I actually, feel very fortunate to have them on the subcommittee, and I know that personally there's no ill intent, but we did go through the issues very thoughtfully and carefully, and I appreciate their deliberation, and I appreciate their analysis, because it was a very useful and thoughtful discussion.
Point of clarification. The term you're talking about is the elected term, not our fiscal year or anything else.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The term,
Wasn't said, so I wanted to.
So it would start when the next First Selectman starts.
Yeah, the commencement date is December 7th, 2015.
If I can just make a couple of comments, and although I think that's sad, I do have to say this, I think it's absolutely necessary to say that there is no ill intent, because I do feel very strongly that tomorrow, when I wake up and I'm asked why a taxpayer would say to me that I'm spending money twice on something, and that in our minutes in July, that the revised position description has been approved by the board, and those responsibilities have been shifted, and those salaries were increased to do that, we're in effect paying those folks to do that and the first selectman to do the job, and that job is being done by those other folks. So I struggled a lot with this. I just can't, a fiduciary responsibility to the town, whether it's $16,000 or $6,000, I in my heart can't justify spending money to do something twice when it's being done once. And so I just want, as much as that's understood, for the right reason.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And I will abstain. Is there any other motions on the table?
Not at this point. I really want to think this through. There's a lot for me to take in, and I got to take off my private business hat and put on my...
Well, I would say that I'll make the motion to have it dealt with tonight. I think that it's before us, so I would say that if there's another time frame, that the Board of Selectmen should consider July 1st. If that's what I'm hearing, so...
For me, I was, and as I said to Lisa at Personnel Subcommittee, my only concern was going into this budget process, and when we have to say no to somebody else, whether it's $16,000 or whatever it is, I'm going to have in the back of my mind that we did this, and I'm wrestling with that, and I have been all day. And it has... as I said, it has nothing to do with who's in the chair. It's what, impact we're going to have and how we explain what we're doing. I'm uncomfortable with saying, we're spending this money, as Nancy said twice, it's, for something that we've taken care of with other means, which I think are good, and I think everything we've done is good. I'm really proud of that. So if you want to make I would make the motion that we begin the new first selectman salary beginning with the fiscal year, July 1st.
Mary, I'd ask you to recuse at this point.
I will recuse myself. That's a motion that's made, and I'll ask Nancy to take the chair.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is to move this forward at the effective date of July 1st.
I'll just restate what I said. A policy or not, I think the right thing to do is term. I get that this is a unique set of circumstances, which is why I think we're even having this debate. Never before have we had a recommendation and the job has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the job has changed midterm. The job didn't give us the luxury of changing at the end of the term, and I get that. I still don't think it's the timing merits us doing this on a fiscal year. We can budget for it. And yes, $16,000, like I said, is not an inconsequential amount of money. We cut Main Street's budget by almost that much or more,
But in terms of the overall budget, it's .00.
It is. It's a small amount in the grand scheme of budget, but we hem and haul for $5,000 for 3 hours up here. And we'll do it again, and we'll remember this conversation.
And when you're telling somebody like Main Street or whoever it is, the library, that they can't have something that we've, that's what it is for me. It's really, and I completely agree with you on the fairness aspect of the term, but
it's just it's just very simple.
We have to be fair to the taxpayers, and we are within our rights as a legislative body under the charter to do that. And I think we need to consider it.
I think, you are within your rights. It's certainly permitted by the charter. I think this sends a terrible message for someone who runs. They're going to come in, wonder, can I rely? So basically what it means is from this point forward, someone who runs for office and wins has to have enough money to, without that salary, to do this, because that salary could be gone.
So, but Lisa,
But this is really an extraordinary set of circumstances.
It is an extraordinary circumstance, and I would say that we did such due diligence going through this study, and I would hazard to think that anybody that's come before us and will come after us will not make a decision willy-nilly like you're suggesting that somebody would do. This is so critically important to the governance of our town, and it's critically important that when we talk about, and again, to me, it is not a dollar amount, because there's significant things that we can do with that money, and when somebody comes and is writing their check to their hard-earned money for us to spend, and we do every single thing we can to pinch every single dollar out to put together a budget, I'm making this decision tonight for those 23,000, there's fewer taxpayers, I'm sure, includes all the kids, right?
Yeah.
That I think we owe a higher responsibility to.
Lisa,
So-
I mean, I agree with your point, that, but the charter says that the first selectman's salary gets set at every budget process, so there has been 350 times
No, it's absolutely.
since the town has been existed that this change could be made, and nobody has invoked it for, ill reason up until this point in our history, and I don't think it's going to make us more likely for that to happen. If we're that concerned about it, we ought to request that for the next Charter Revision Commission, they ought to change the rules on us and make it about the term. If we're that concerned about people,
Well, I agree. I mean, I just
You know.
point out that a Republican majority did give Mr. Vincent a 13.62%
Lisa,
midterm.
Dave
Now there's a
Ryan-
reduction.
Lisa, now
Dave
you're making
Ryan
it political by
Well,
talking about
seconded
it
that
anyway.
motion.
That's why.
It's
why
not
is
just
that
a
political?
Republican thing, Lisa.
Because you're trying to draw a conclusion that a Republican majority, when if you look to the vote of that, there was Republicans that voted against that and Republicans that voted for that. There were Democrats that voted against that, and there were Democrats that voted for that. Right now, in this very moment, the message and the discussion that we have is going to set the tone. And I think it's our responsibility right now to watch very closely what we say.
I absolutely agree, which is why we had this policy since 2010. This was with Bob Hensley, a Republican chairman. And we stated the policy then that we do it with the position, not the person. And we do it for precisely that reason. And I think it's an outstanding policy. I don't understand, but it is
So
your prerogative to abandon a policy at the moment of decision. You can do that. It is not a written policy. It's not something we're bound by law to follow, but that's not how I operate. When there's a principle, if I think the principle needs re-examining, you do it before the moment of decision.
Lisa,
Not at.
I agree with what you're saying, but you're, and again, I'm agreeing with your policy, but I'm on the Personnel Subcommittee. These folks are not. It's not their policy. They don't get a chance to say what's their policy or not.
That's right.
So we got to be careful with that. And again, I mean, there's a quote, I think it's obscene for an elected official to receive six figures, said Selectman John Hampton, a Democrat. It diminishes the word public servant over the current salary that we're paying the first selectman. So,
And at that time, it
again,
was.
And John Romano, the Republican, voted against it. Dave Ryan, the Democrat, voted for it. It wasn't a partisan issue then. It's not a partisan issue now. I'm the chairman of the Republican Party, and I'm voting for term, not for effective date.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's anything but a partisan issue.
And I didn't accuse anyone of ill motives. I just pointed out the
I know,
facts.
but you got to be
Yeah.
careful because, again, you and I are on the same page with this. What we do tonight and how we bicker matters for future things. And if we're civil, which I think we've been for the most part,
Well, it just
that needs to continue to go.
To think that we would do that to someone midterm.
And again, it's not. I don't think anybody said it's about someone tonight. People can
But it will have
perceive
an
our
impact
intent.
on someone tonight.
It does. Of course it will. It
It
does.
will. And the decisions that we make and how we spend our money has impacts on people all the time. So, I mean, it's quite seriously, as we set our mill rate and we do all that we do, there's people whose decisions we make, then that impact them. So I certainly don't want to cut off discussion, but I just want to ask if anyone else has any further comments before we would vote. So hearing none, we have a first motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
The motion passes. Thank you.
While we're waiting for Mary to get here, will the, seeing how I'm not on the Personnel Subcommittee, I think a very good point was made to annually look at this at the Personnel Subcommittee as part of your, I'm going to call it your process that you do every year.
There's nothing that stops us from doing that.
Okay.
Actually, I'm glad she brought up the cost of living thing.
That's a really
we
good
hadn't
idea.
thought of that.
It's a
with
very
the-
good point.
Well, I think the study has, Ridgefield is an interesting point, but, minus the having somebody, do a consultant's review of that and benchmark stuff on a regular basis, we don't know specifically why that was raised, so I think that's interesting.
Joan, you want a bandana for the dog? Got a cat?
Have need.
Do you want a banner for yourself?
Mary will not be returning, so we can...
Okay, so I would ask this time, are there any other reports?
Yes. I just had a request for the First Selectman's office. Can you please do an analysis of how this will impact the First Selectman's retirement benefits with the reduction in salary beginning in July?
Okay.
Okay, so any other reports?
Yes. I just wanted to let the public know that there is a new program at the library. It's called What's the Hoopla? And it allows you to download, watch or listen on your PC, Mac, or tablet, iPad, or other mobile devices and borrow up to 3 selections a month. So you can get streaming movies, TV shows, music, and audiobooks. And so that's a very cool program we have there.
Very good. As far as the Culture Parks and Rec subcommittee meeting, I have requested Jerry Toner to get us the final numbers. I'm still waiting for a response, so it's not for lack of effort from Mike's or my part to get final numbers for this board. Again, we are looking forward to making a presentation on what we're going to do with the Simsbury Farms Revenue Fund, but until we get those final revenue and expense items that we tasked Jerry with at our last subcommittee meeting, there's nothing further to report. So obviously it's a busy time with audit and everything else with the finance department, so I don't know if perhaps that's adding to the delay.
I would just add too, and I know Lisa, you were there, we went to the Simsbury Meadows presentation by Fuss & O'Neill, and it was a real good look back to that area in town and what initial studies had, what recommendations came out of those initial studies, and reviewing what those uses were, and just making sure that they were in keeping with our current vision right now. And so I know we passed some monies around, obviously having that study taking place, and my final comment at the end of that was they're going to be moving forward, adjusting the plan for that area based on the feedback. And I didn't get an answer to my question, but it was around the idea of the timing of that and when we would see it, and how that would play into the budget process, just so we could have a better understanding of not only the one-time costs associated with things like the trails and such, but there was also discussion around the impact on the operating budget on a regular basis on that. So, I think folks are eager to make that move forward, or have that move forward quickly, but so having a deep understanding of the dollar impact would be helpful. So that was a good meeting.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nobody's opposed.
We're adjourned.
Sixteen years of service.
And take that into consideration.